I want to welcome everybody here. This is our second Zoom call around what happened to Manna and what next steps we can take. And the agenda, I posted the agenda in the notes, so it's right in the very beginning. And I've asked, I'm not going to take the time to welcome everybody here, but we are going to introduce the speakers. So Sarita, can you take a moment and introduce
Yeah.
Lori?
Yeah, I have that. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to introduce Lori Barkledge, who entered the world of midwifery in 1994, later expanding her focus to include trauma healing work. The combination serves her well in everything she does within the midwifery movement. She recognizes that the protocols and dynamics of the current transactional birth system are a trauma-driven organism that can only become a healthier relational system when the trauma is addressed with the intention to heal. Lori is clear that the trauma healing has to start within each of us so that we can better serve the person in front of us. And with that, my friend Lori Barkledge.
Thank you very much to everybody who has come and everyone who will hear this. I want to make a point to mention that everything that we're going to be doing here will be on behalf of those who are going to join us later as well. So thank you to everyone who's listening as well. I'm not going to delve into a lot of the hows and whys of what we're doing today. I'm going to ask that you participate with me in allowing. So we're going to just take a moment and just listen as we set our intention. I want you to just kind of picture, you don't have to like think it over really hard, just kind of let it be that this is on behalf of ourselves, our ancestors, our descendants, our families, our co-workers, and anyone who would benefit from this session. We're going to be addressing today whatever keeps us from working together in the best interest of all families, whatever keeps the community as a whole from recognizing birth as a human right, and whatever we perceive as having been lost by what has Deb referred to as the implosion of man and fam. So we don't know what the whatever is in those statements yet. Our bodies, our energies, and our relationships already know. We're going to allow the statements to flow past us, and we're merely observing them and allowing them for now. We can save the chat, so individual bits can be delved into later from an intention of healing more deeply. We're first going to set our intention with our breath. Shallow breathing keeps us in fight or flight, and we want to be in rest and restore mode. So let's take one really deep breath. I recognize that it might feel scary if you're used to being in fight or flight. If that's the case, breathe as deeply as you can. No judgment here. Just say to yourself, it's safe to rest and restore right now. And breathe as deep as you can. Even one deep breath can help us set ourselves up as a safe place physiologically. We're going to take about 2 minutes and set intentions as individuals and as a group. Now, I'll warn you, for a couple of minutes, it's going to feel like trauma dumping. So reach back in the corners and all the icky stuff and scrape that stuff out. The stuff you had not wanted to say out loud, the stuff you wanted to scream from the rooftops. You think it might sound petty, or that you sound confused, or maybe that you even feel uninformed. We're putting everything that comes to mind into the circle of intention. These could be statements and comments giving voice to frustrations you have with what's been revealed in this process. You can keep them to yourself, and I invite you to place them into the chat. You can send them privately to me if you want to keep them anonymous, and they can be posted to a whole group if you invite the group's visual focus. For now, we're going to try not to read everything everyone else is posting. We're just going to know that it's put in there. The intention is for all of us. Of course, you can't help but see some of it. And if it triggers something for you, go ahead and add that. The intention right now is to reveal it so we can see it and address it. I'm going to watch the timer so you don't have to. So go ahead and add whatever comes to mind into the intentional circle right now by trauma dumping into the chat. Just throw it all in there. What has this brought up for you? What feels icky about it? What betrayals? What sadness? What lost hopes and dreams have been brought to light? And again, if you don't feel comfortable putting them in the chat, that's okay. Even thinking them to yourself and just adding them to the group intention is helpful. And I know the power when we combine our intention, we can do anything. I'll remind you that this looks like trauma dumping. We're not actually trauma dumping. I just know that in the short time we have, that's something that would be helpful to people because they know what that looks like. We are actually setting intentions into a pot or into our circle. I've heard people refer to it as a cauldron. Pick whatever picture works well for you. We're not trying to spiritually bypass anything, and we're not trying to wallow in anything. So we're just throwing out here the raw feelings. And I know it may feel kind of overwhelming right now. Give us a few minutes and we'll work through it together. Okay. It's okay if something else comes to mind as we're doing this work. You can add it to the chat as well. What we're going to do now, number one, if you feel really compelled, you may keep typing. At probably about 30 seconds from now, because I see we're really getting into it. In about 30 seconds from now, I'm going to stop us and we're going to hold everything that's already been put into the bundle. Just letting you know, we are going to touch on this at the end of the session as well. So we'll be able to kind of change gears. We're not going to leave you feeling like this because this does not feel great. This is part of the work though. We're going to get uncomfortable in it because all the energy that's been stored, we've been using our energy to hold it back to keep it from destroying us. And we have to bring it out because that energy is needed right now. We can't utilize that energy if it's invested in the past, and we cannot utilize it well if it's invested in the future. We have to bring it to now. And the only way we can do that is to release the hold it has on us now. So with all, okay, hands off the keyboard. Let's come back. Take a deep, one more deep breath, as deep as you can. Recognize the tendency that it's kind of feeling really tight right now. That's okay. We're here together. We're holding one another. What we're going to do now is we're going to utilize a technique that is really quite ancient, and we're finding out with brain scans now that it's incredibly effective. We're going to take one hand and put it on the back of our heads where we cradle a baby's head. It's kind of at the thumb will be at the bend of the neck there. This is our vision center. This is where our perceptions are created. And then we're going to take a thumb, just kind of in the little curve of the eye. You may feel your tear duct very gently. This is a very, very gentle acupressure touch on the tear duct. And then your middle finger or ring finger, either one will work, whatever's comfortable, on the other one. So you may look like you're making little, somebody said little coyote eyes. You may put that here, and you can just rest the other one on the middle here, or you can hover it however that makes for more comfortable for you. So while you're holding that, just allow however you normally breathe. There's no wrong way to do this. What we're going to do is have you hold that as I read through these statements. We're going to allow the energy around them to shift. Just going to hold on to that. One is affecting our midline and one is helping our perception. We're going to work on integrating it. We are just allowing, you don't have to read and hear everything. If you start to feel overwhelmed, just continue to hold the pose until the feeling passes. If you feel completely overwhelmed, bring your hands down to your heart and just hold them there while we finish. Everything about the betrayal, the theft, the lack of integrity, how being a woman healer is scary, sad, and hard, how organizing women is painful, how the medical model is seemingly more important than sacred work, how it feels that there's no safe place ever, and how we've lost so much, how we're hurting cats and other women are our greatest enemy, all of the ancient wounds, everything we've done, and it still feels like women and children don't matter. How deeply we feel those statements. We're putting in the grief for the loss of the understanding that birth is sacred. We're looking for the helpers. We endeavor to find common ground among all scopes of birth workers and separate the anger, the disillusion of mana, with birth work as a construct needing to move forward in the future. We're throwing in how it feels to be alienated, how it feels to be singled out as an outlaw, the loss of sisterhood that we thought we had, the feeling that there's no hope of healing something this big, the feeling that who can I trust, the irritation and anger that I have over this, the sadness that those responsible likely never be held accountable, wondering, looking around, whose hand can I hold? How can we all work together for the energy of birth and holding that next several generations? Anything about all of that that makes us want to cry. Whatever makes it feel like it's all been a lie. The feeling that staying a lone ranger is the only way to keep doing this and things are all wonky. The feeling that our hearts are on the ground after 50 years of vision and dreams so easily tossed for others' personal agenda. And the feeling that we have a deep need for a safe community for all birth workers. Remember, we don't have to know everything about those statements. Our relationships and our energy already know. Go ahead and bring your hands down to your heart. And so, my camera's a little bit too loud. It's like, just gotta bring one over the other, like so. We're gonna allow those to integrate. If anybody needs to talk with me afterwards, I'm going to ask you to drop me a line. We are going to wrap up this session with anything that this has brought up for us. Thank you very much for setting the intention for healing. Thank you for bringing these things to light so that we can address them. It's critical moving forward that we don't move and work and build a fit foundation from a traumatized place. If we do, we might as well just go ahead and skip to the end and just give it up now. So let's not do that part. Let's go ahead and see what we've got next. I'm not sure who's in charge of the next thing. So I just want to say I'm honored to be here with you. Thank you for the work you're doing in the world.
Thank you, Lori. Wow, that was quite powerful. I believe Deb was gonna talk to us next about nonviolent communication.
I am. I have tears in my eyes, Lori. That was really, really a beautiful way to start. And so right now we're just talking about some foundational principles that we want to bring to our work together over these next 4 weeks. And one of those key components is a idea called nonviolent communication. And probably most of you are familiar with it. It has been around since 1972. A man named Marshall Rosenberg developed this out of humanistic psychology. And it was very popular in Santa Cruz, which is where I started my work. And actually the Center for Nonviolent Communication is there in Santa Cruz. You might also be familiar with it if you have done any EST work or any other personal development work, because it tends to follow in those circles. So the 4 components of nonviolent communication are observation, feeling, need, and request. There's an acronym for it. It's called OFNR. These components help individuals to express themselves without judgment, recognize their feelings and needs, and make clear and positive requests. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped too fast. Nonviolent communication is an approach to enhance communication, understanding, and connection based on principles of nonviolence and humanistic psychology. It is not an attempt to end a disagreement, but rather a way that aims to increase empathy and understanding to improve the overall quality of our lives. So, as much as possible, we're going to try to refer to this. I posted a link in here where you can find more information about nonviolent communication. But in essence, we will respect feelings, needs, make a clear and positive request of what is needed. Any questions about that, you can post them in the chat and I'd be happy to answer you as I can. And this last statement on here, which says deep need for safe community of leaders for all birth workers. I think that is our ultimate goal here, is to create a safe space for us to be able to do this work moving forward. Thanks, Rita.
Thanks, Deb. And I think that for anybody who's joined us or is going to be listening to the recording, it's fairly easy to see that the intention that we've all been setting has been to move forward, having left behind toxicity that we can leave behind through trauma work and be able to move forward in a more united and clear direction that can lead us perhaps into something that arises from the community rather than top down, and something that can be sustainable. Deb, did you want to talk about on the agenda? Our next thing was to kind of give an overview. I know you're not feeling well. I'll be glad to do what I can, and then you can add in.
Do you mind, hun? And
Sure.
Sarita, and then I'll, yeah,
Sure,
anything that I see missing.
Sure, that's fine. And I do want to say here that as we go along, I'm going to add in some of the talk around things that we as a smaller group have been talking about. And again, what we want to do is have the questions and the input arise from the community, the midwifery community itself, and for us just to be a little bit of a glue here at the beginning. Over the next month through a series of 4 Zooms, this one being the first one. We would hope, as an overarching goal, to talk about that for a minute, that at the end of these 4 Zooms, as the participants and the community generates conversation in between on social media, that we can maybe come up with some type of a action plan or some action steps where people can work together to address some of the voids that have been left behind and some of the questions that haven't been answered. Along the way, please stop me or, ask me a question or add an input, and I'll be asking you specifically at some points. So as we said, this first one was really to get us going and to set the intention and to bring in trauma work, which we really want to do with each Zoom, each of the next 3, as at the beginning, so that we can go ahead and get rid of our, anything that puts us in that fight or flight or freeze or fawn, because then our brains can open up and we can learn and we can work together more easily. The next week, we wanted to specifically address the Foundation for the Advancement of Midwifery, and see if there can, in the meantime, if anything has been that needs to be updated, can be shared. One of the things that we've been talking about is arranging some trauma healing work for the former or for the last FAM board members, because we recognize and they have expressed the trauma that they experienced of having been working together and having projects that they were committed to, and suddenly having all of that kind of the rug pulled out from under them in a way that they didn't see coming and didn't expect to have happen, given that they were trying to follow codes and stay true to the mission of that charitable auxiliary. So one of the action steps that our small group has come up with is to recommend that they do that trauma work as a group. Our questions around that have also been if the community is interested in knowing if there are any resources that are left to be salvaged. You've heard probably in the previous recording that it's a fair amount of monies that were in the accounts when they were frozen by the MANA board. And as we know, there's not been any transparent accounting for how those monies were spent or used. And as I reminded everybody last week, when you have a nonprofit 501c3, that money it belongs to the public. It doesn't belong to anybody, any one person in particular. So the question is, are there assets that are salvageable? What happened to those assets in the meantime? And is the community interested in, one, knowing the answers to those questions, and 2, having a similar type or the same setup for a charitable foundation moving forward that could begin to be a place for donations to be gathered and then given through grant making to diverse projects as had been planned by the previous FAM board. Deanne, I don't know if there was anything that you wanted to add to that at this point, or if anybody had any particular questions or input that they wanted to make sure we talked about or brought up or researched prior to next week's Zoom when we talk more in depth about FAM.
I can't think of anything. I just want to throw out there once again, it's $78,000 that are missing.
Right. So again, the question to the community is does that still exist? Where is it? And how much do you want to know? And that we'll talk more in depth next week, next Thursday, same time, same place. The following week, the topic, and all along the way, other topics can come up. We're not restricting it just to these topics, but we want to have those as the main focus and be able to even do some research to add to that conversation. So our third Zoom would be around the MANA Statistics Project and questions concerning who is now serving in a board position to manage that nonprofit asset, what the plans are to fund it, how it's going to be sustainable and continue to exist and serve the whole community, and as well as then how do contributors, how do we make sure new contributors can sign up? How do you make sure that existing contributors are still served in a timely manner? And how do researchers apply to have access to the database for use in whatever way? Okay. And then my question to all of you and the community would be, what's important to the community? Number one, what would you like to see from a database? How much do you know about this one and what its potential is? And what's important to you in salvaging that project, if it is important to you at all? And if not, we can talk about that. I know a lot of states in their licensure legislation require submission of statistics, and so the ManaStats database has a place to serve a lot of people. The fourth week, we were going to talk about basically a roundup of all of the conversations to that date, with hopefully at the end of it, as I said, coming up with some action steps for some or all of us to work together or in small teams in trying to move forward through this transition between the demise of MANA and whatever the future might hold for the community that would serve it well. Let's see. There is a question in the chat around that Jade asks about funding, donations, and statistics. How will those be utilized with more transparency, especially for independent midwives? Exactly. Those are the kinds of questions we want to talk about around ManaStats. We do social media, you read comments and you just never know what they mean. We have seen comments that indicated that someone is in charge of ManaStats. We're going to follow up anything that we've seen. So if you've seen any comments from anybody saying that they know about ManaStats or they have any information and you can follow that up and bring to that third Zoom, that would be great. That's what we're going to do. So basically, we're asking everybody to help us with some fact finding as well as some strategic thinking to come up with a way to move through this transition with the integrity of the community intact. Whenever you go through a transition and there's unanswered questions, it leaves a weaker foundation for the next chapter. And that's part of what we're trying to do, is create a stronger foundation for whatever the next chapter might be. Deb, do you have any? That was sort of my overview of the Zooms and why we're doing what we're doing, with the hopes that some
Sarita?
of you will step up and take it from there and we'll help you. Okay.
Jesslyn is one of the is a FAM board member, and is that her hand being raised there?
I don't see her, so I don't know.
I can't be on camera right now. I'm sorry.
Oh, there you are. Yes.
Hi.
Yeah.
No, thank you for facilitating and for hosting this space, to Sarita and Deborah.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry I can't be on camera at the moment, but I am one of the recent FAM board members. And this
There you
kind of has to do with the questions of ownership and the monies and the complaint regarding the paperwork we submitted to Washington. I also so like myself and Deanne and Samsara are all listed in the registration for FAM.
Right.
And I'm wondering if anyone has information about like what, if any, action we need to take to protect ourselves in the sense that like these monies have disappeared, these monies that are technically under FAM, and like none of us, no one here, and I know that legal dragging is unfortunately happening across midwifery in other ways, but like no one needs to be like legally dragged for MANA's actions moving this money around. So I just, yeah, like there's concern of like, okay, like should we take all of our names off of this organization? Should we be like basically because our accounts are frozen, there's only so much we can do to remain compliant as a
Right.
as a nonprofit. And then since we can't do business, like all of us are, you know, needing to focus on other things in midwifery or in our lives or in advocacy or in direct service. So it's like, how much time are we realistically needing to take to maintain an organization or to keep it compliant when we can't even access the funds? And then like if those funds are being used in ways that are not getting reported to the IRS or whatever it may be, like where does that fall?
Right.
So it's just there's all these like other questions about the cleanup that I have, and like you know, like luckily I don't have any dependents. I'm unmarried. I don't have kids, but like I don't want this to follow any of us around for the next 5 years because MANA isn't communicating about what happened with those money. It really needs to be transparent because it's people's, you know, well-being and like legal safety in the mix as well.
Right.
Um,
That's an
yeah.
excellent point that, you know, it really does make volunteers who were doing the work with good intention be possibly vulnerable. And I think that I hadn't really thought about it quite from that perspective. And I think that consulting some attorneys to get some input on these questions is worth our time. So yeah,
Yeah, well,
continue.
I have Legal Shield for myself, so I can call
Uh-huh.
and just ask on like a personal level and
Right.
gather whatever information I can. My suspicion is that they'll say, you know, individuals who don't have control over the funds, like we should be removed, and there should be some kind of like state agent as the main person listed, like a independent third party. But I think to your point, Sarita, like it's also discouraging to like volunteer boards in general, right? Like you're trying to put time into something and then you're getting tied up in something that you don't even have any power over. So
Completely.
yeah, I can follow up on like a personal legal level and find out what I can and then relay that to Jan and Samsara and whoever else needs to know, and we can kind of go from there. But if anyone else has nonprofit legal experience or anything like that, those insights are always really helpful and appreciated.
Excellent. I think that's that's really important for us to do some research about and bring back to the next Zoom. I'll certainly ask. I have an attorney brother. I'll be asking him his thoughts, and maybe we can all just gather legal opinions and see what we can do with it. You know, see what the answer, how we can best protect everybody. I do have that question around if the three of you are still listed, is that an official document? And if so, and if MANA no longer exists and therefore FAM doesn't have a member, it's so confusing. Like there's so many different ways that could be interpreted, and it's so confusing. And I think it behooves the community to and the individuals to clear it up. So yeah, so let's all think about that and what it means to
Can I say
and
something,
even how we
Sarita?
can make anything like that happen.
Can I say something, Sarita? It's
Please,
Barbara.
yes.
I drew up a complaint shortly after all this went down. I don't even remember the dates. It's been at least a year ago now. And then we sent a second follow-up letter to the state of Washington because Washington is where MANA is chartered. And we've heard nothing. Samsara, being the president of the former FAM board, has heard nothing. And so that's concerning to me too, because, you know, our complaint included the funds disappearing as well as the dissolution of the FAM board illegally. And so, yeah, all you legal researchers out there might ask about that as well. So
Thank you.
Should we hound the state? Should we keep after it? I don't know, but it's kind of frustrating. Later, we still haven't heard anything. So
And I have brought up and don't know what to do. The fact that we took over an organization that laundered $500,000 for other people. And then we got taken down because we said no more.
Right. So I think that, so here's what I'm going to say about all that. And I'm going to quote my legal expert, a couple of legal experts who I was furious the first time I heard it until I have realized over and over again how true it is. Within the law, there's no such thing as right or wrong. It's who can push the hardest, right? And MANA, FAM really can't push that hard because number one, you didn't have any funds, and like it just, you couldn't push hard. For this particular thing, I'm the only people who can push hard enough would be enough of the community to get involved, just like with voter kinds of issues, because we're not talking about something that's high dollar or powerful stuff. It just really has to be that the community has to kind of push this. So let's kind of put all of that around the FAM thinking and bring it to next, if this will be the precedent set. These are all great questions. Any questions you can put into anything, and be thinking about it. And if you can go ahead and put these questions on the What Happened to MANA Facebook page, that'll be an easy place for us to keep the conversation going. Maybe we can get an attorney or two involved. I can think of one right off the bat. Deanne, if you wouldn't mind, maybe you can talk to Lisa about helping us, giving us her opinion about these things, and get a conversation going there on that Facebook page to help us navigate our way through this confusion. All right, any more questions or anything about what we've talked about so far, which would be the nonviolent communication, but also what the topics of those four or of these next 3 Zooms are going to be, as well as the overarching goal to have some sort of
I think it might be a good idea. This is Deb. It's now 10:40. We want to wrap this right at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And just to reiterate that the last Zoom, which will be, maybe somebody can post what day that'll be. That'll be next steps and action steps, right?
Right.
That the community can take. You'll notice Sarita and I both are just referring back to us as a group, because I think where things really went south for MANA was when they lost their grassroots in their leadership. And when things started being decided by a small group of elite people who controlled both decision-making and finances, it created an opportunity for a lot of self-interest. And that's what happens when humans organize. I did put some stuff in that group, the What Happened to MANA group, around why humans organize and make groups, which is, I think, really fundamentally important as we think about creating a new group. What is our intentions? What's our goal? Because I think another place that I see, because I was at that beginning time when MANA was first created, and at that time, women were being strapped down to have their babies. They were being shaved. They were being, they were being deprived of their support people. Things were really pretty terrible for birth in the United States. And our original intention was to create a group for all midwives' voices to be heard, because as we can see how difficult it is for women's voices to be heard. But we lost sight when we started to make the needs of the midwife more important than the needs of birth. And I think that might be another fundamental problem that I see in retrospect. So that'll be the goal of that last meeting, and then action steps that the community can take to potentially build a new organization that could, as somebody asked, create a safe place for all birth workers to, and for birthing people to, be able to get their needs met.
Right. Thank you. So one of the shifts I saw as well, to follow up with what Deb just said, was that when many of us started this movement and started organizations like MANA, we were doing it very much from the perspective of being citizens demanding our own birth rights. And it was that then was as much, if not more, the drive than the fact that we wanted to serve other people. We wanted them to have those same birth rights. In talking about possibilities for the future, I want to just take a moment to talk about to introduce actually some foundational work that's already been being done by sort of arising through another group of us. And we're doing this work to facilitate the renaissance of an autonomous organization that combines citizens and professionals working together to advocate for birth as a human right. We're calling it the Trust Birth Collective, and it is a grassroots movement with an underlying agreement that families own birth. An existing facilitator training program is being updated for those who want to help their communities understand their rights as birthing families. There's really not any reason to reinvent the wheel, so we're looking back to see what we can update and bring into a more modern look and approach. To facilitate this new chapter, Rowan Bailey is serving as executive director for the Trust Birth Collective and couldn't be here with us today, but is actively seeking people. And we want to emphasize that it would include citizens as well as providers who have nonprofit experience and would be willing to join a diverse executive board. If you are one of these people, or you know someone who is energetic, passionate, and ready to work, because it will be a working board, not just something to put on your resume. It'll be a working board, and they will be working towards creating new possibilities in a healthier birth culture. You can contact Rowan at, you ready? Rowan, ROWAN, at trustbirth.com. And this is one possibility of a vehicle, a container, to bring citizens and providers together to advocate for, as I said, birth as a human right. So this was a good time to introduce that. There's a lot of transitional work to be done, so please help us find the right people for the job. Let's see, anything else? How are we doing on time? We have about 10 minutes. I know, Lori, you were going to help us do some closing, some from the opening. I don't know exactly how much time you need for that, but are we pretty well?
This would probably be a good time. If anyone still has questions, please put them in the chat. We do want to make sure everyone is heard. You're welcome to reach out to me following this. I know that these type of trauma healing sessions can be incredibly powerful and they can be beneficial, and sometimes they bring up some really big stuff. So do not hesitate to reach out to me if you feel like you need additional support. You can write to me at Lori at Birthing Peace Within, and I'm going to write that in the chat right now.
And my other question to Lori is if you're going to help Deb prevent trauma and help with the recording and getting, will this be out on, Facebook?
We will work
on our
together
page
to make that happen with the least amount of trauma possible.
Prevent trauma. I'm all about it. And I asked that. I asked that, Deb, just because there are people that told me I just saw that we're trying to get in and for whatever reason couldn't get here. So I wanted to make sure I let them know that it'll be recorded and posted in the same place as the previous recordings. We'll do the same thing with each week. So thank you again for joining us. And Lori, I'll let you take us out.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Sarita. I know quite a few of you have been thinking about this much more than just inside these meetings. So thank you to everyone. I do feel like I've been accused of being an eternal optimist. I do believe we're making the world a better place one breath at a time. So I know that it takes all of us. And I know that when we're willing to look at the icky bits, we can work together to bring that to reality. So everything that this call has brought up, I know there were, maybe you learned something new, maybe you just were reminded of, yeah, that's still happening, or where did we go wrong? Any of the feelings from earlier that still felt unfinished for you? Anything you want to still write in the comments? What has come up for you? I didn't necessarily know, how much money or how many resources were lost in this transition. And to me, that was kind of a shock. And I know we all have trauma around money, so we're throwing any of that in there. Throwing in any fear about trying to move forward in the future, thinking we're never going to get it right. We're just too traumatized, any of those kind of feelings that come up for you. And anything else that you want to throw in there, we're just going to hold either on our hearts, or I'm going to ask that you hold at your hand and way, way down, put it just right down there in your crotch. We're going to just send some energy through to that very core down our midline. You can put one here. If you prefer to put it at the back of your head, you can, but it's really powerful to put one up here and just nestle one right down in there. Breathe deeply into there. Everything that has led up to all of our trauma around this, we don't always know what it is. It may be epigenetic. It may have been this morning. Everything that led up to our feeling traumatized and confused and frustrated happened. It happened, and it is possible. Let me take a step back. That felt like too powerful for right now. Let's go with maybe it's possible. Because if we can open ourselves up to the possibility that this could shift, maybe it's possible that we can move forward in support of one another, in support of creating the foundation that we know that we all wish we had. We want to create something that our ancestors would be proud of and that our descendants will benefit from. And maybe it's possible that we could even create it in our lifetimes. Anything we've ever done to contribute to this trauma for anyone else is being placed into the circle for healing now. Anytime we have betrayed someone, anytime we felt betrayed by someone, including ourselves, is healing now. Any parts of that feel too big, putting them right back in there. Any of that is possible, that we can move forward together, creating community, building with the foundation of love and support and the desire for a better world. I see a couple of people in the chat have been channeling that healing birth is healing the earth. Absolutely. I do know that each of us who have chosen to be involved in this type of work have seen miracles happen. We know what's possible on the micro. We've seen it work in individual families. We've seen families changed forever because they recognize their own power. We are dealing right now with a community, a global community of women who don't know how powerful they are. And we do have the power to help those who are ready to shift that. Anything that feels too big about that, too scary about that, too impossible about that, we're putting that in to our bundle. We're breathing deeply into it each day, even if we take one deep breath into it, we're healing those parts. I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up now and for your communities. Go ahead and bring your hands to your heart for one more deep breath. I want to express my deep gratitude for everyone that's here and everyone who will hear this. Absolutely reach out if you feel that you could need some additional support. I absolutely love what is being created, and I know that it's possible that we can move forward in healthy ways. So thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you so much. That felt really healing. I can feel my sinuses are opening up.
We're going to say maybe it's possible to take in life and breath.
Yeah. Alrighty, so yes, so with your assistance, Lori, we'll get this up there as soon as possible so that everybody can have access to it. I'm sorry, I think Mercury's retrograde right now too, on top of it all. And we're getting really close to this eclipse. So, hang on, humans, here we go. But I think that we contextualized our kind of built the basket today and what we're gonna do in the next 3 weeks, and that feels really good. And thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks, Deb.
Alrighty. So oh wow, we did really great. We have 4 more minutes. We're like on time. Wow, I'm impressed. If anybody has any questions, I'll leave the chat open. If there's anything that got said or that you're unclear about or that you want more clarity or anything you just like to add to the conversation, any suggestions for next steps, please put them in the chat and we'll be sure to save that too.
Other topics too. I mean,
Other
we threw out
topics.
the main topics of FAM and MANA stats and then next steps, but if there are topics in particular that you want to find out more about, that we can see what we can find out, or you want to discuss, then bring those to the Zooms or to the Facebook page or put them in the chat. We want to, this truly is a grassroots project that we're working on. We keep coming back to, we want the answers to arise from the community, and it's really just our job to try to figure out how to ask the questions so that those answers can rise. So.
And I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity to kind of get it all done, because there's so many questions and there's so much animosity, and nobody's, I feel like, is, aside from this group of women, being able to say, hey, here was my culpability in that, let's get some things done, or I was the scapegoat in this, let's get some things done. I think that there's been just this idea that we're just going to sweep it all under the rug, or put a nice little note on Facebook about, hi, we're not going to be friendly anymore, we're just going to dissolve, and that's going to be it, and so sorry. That everybody's supposed to just be okay with that, or take that and not have any questions. I mean, I think we're focusing on the money and FAM and all these other things, but I think that it's so much bigger than that. And if we could kind of trudge through some of that, maybe we'll get some answers. And really, Sarita, Deb, all you guys, without somebody like putting these things on and putting these things together and being vocal on social media and what have you, I just don't think that anybody would have heard about it. So Sarita, I appreciate that you didn't just lay down and die on this one. So
Sarita, what's our new bumper sticker? T-shirt. Rowan's t-shirt. You're muted. Gotta unmute yourself, Sarita.
She just won't cooperate.
Yes. Yeah,
I might have a sticker on the back of my car that says the midwives refuse to obey. So,
Yeah.
and so everybody that drives behind me gets a load of that.
I used to have an Audre Lorde that said your silence won't save you.
Yeah.
That was 2 cars ago. I need to get a new one. And I didn't even know what I was thinking when I put it on there. I just thought it sounded good. And I was like, that was a can of worms I opened.
Yeah, I think
I like
that's,
all these.
I think that
Exactly.
that's what they were counting on. I mean, you know, they're just counting on that
Right.
we're all just gonna go kumbaya and it's, you know, all happy and
Right.
and the only reason we can't do that is because the future, you know, the future is what's at stake, right? And
Right. Right. Somebody, you know, it's like one big happy, not so happy, dysfunctional family, and we all know family dynamics and, you know, who's the scapegoat and who, you know, how it all works, and we protect the secrets, and we also know that you're only as sick as your secrets. And I don't really want, you know, I'm a healer, and I'm not interested in these secrets continuing to make the community sick, because the species is depending on, well, you want me to get esoteric here for a minute, you know, the species is depending on us.
that's
Like
right.
we're the glue, and if the glue is not gluey enough, you know, if the glue isn't doing what
Working.
it's supposed to be doing, then the species and the village and the species falls apart. And Odon's very clear about that. You know, the research actually is very clear about that. So to me, it is that important that we uncover the secrets, not to shame anybody, and not to tarnish an image, but to fertilize healthy ground for the future. That's all. It's as simple as that. I'll say again, as I've said before, I do it for my granddaughters.
Right. That's a great way to stop. And
Yeah.
that's perfect period for the next generation, for 7 generations, right? All right, ladies, I'm gonna close this meeting down, but thank you so much for being here. Please help us amplify this voice, share this video, share this information. You know, Jade, thank you for being here and for your support. And I know that there was a few people that were frustrated and for whatever reason couldn't get in. I don't know what happened, but let's make sure that they get the link and find out how to get here. And right now I'm just making sure that I can record the chat because I don't want to lose that. So, and we already lost Lori.
Some browsers, Deb, will ask you like the link won't work without a passcode. But when you go in, you can put your meeting ID and your passcode as a numeric. That might be easier for people. I know my Mac is notorious for not, like the Zoom links don't work without,
Okay.
you know,
So you need a
ridiculous
meeting
amounts.
ID
So
number.
a
That should
meeting
have been
ID
in
number
the invite,
and
but yeah.
so in the link it's in there.
Uh-huh.
But some browsers won't take the link without a separate
I see.
passcode. So
Okay.
if there's like a numeric passcode, it's usually like 6 numbers or 7 numbers.
Mhm.
That'll be able to get people in. Apple is just extra.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll look into it and try to figure it out for next week, but hopefully it'll all be a lot easier next week.
Yeah.
Thanks, Deb. I'll see you next time.
Okay, honey. Bye-bye, guys. I need to copy this. How do I copy it?